Welcome to today's deep dive. If you've ever gripped your steering wheel in absolute frustration during a bad commute, feeling like the road is just a total battleground, well, wait until you hear what we're unpacking today.
Yeah, it really puts a standard rush hour into perspective.
Oh, entirely.
Mm.
We have this fascinating stack of sources to go through, and they primarily focus on a highly detailed field analyst log. It's titled Asphalt Anarchy, the Syndicate.
Right, and when you first glance at this document, it reads exactly like a covert military operative's debriefing from an active combat zone. You picture, like, a dusty tent, maps spread out on a folding table.
Exactly. You expect a field analyst pointing to enemy flank movements, choke points, ambush zones.
The lexicon the author uses is just heavily militarized. The logs are saturated with terms like tactical evasion, perimeter threats, and pincer traps. You naturally expect this to describe a heavily contested tactical theater.
But then you flip the page, and suddenly that tactical map is just a city street. I mean, this isn't a war zone. This is a meticulous day-by-day breakdown of urban traffic chaos in Sector 0471.
Specifically, Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, in July of 2026.
Right. And before we go any further, for anyone listening in, say, a quiet suburb in Ohio or a highly regulated avenue in London, we need to calibrate what a city street actually means in this specific context.
Yeah, the scale is completely different.
It really is. Picture a narrow strip of asphalt boiling in tropical heat, just overflowing with a chaotic high-speed mix of lumbering, brightly painted private buses, three-wheeled auto rickshaws darting around like metallic insects, heavy SUVs, and, thousands of lightweight scooters. Everyone is fighting for the exact same inch of forward momentum.
It is the absolute definition of an urban survival manual disguised as a traffic report. The sheer volume of mixed transit vehicles occupying spaces designed for, well, maybe half that capacity creates a fascinating pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Reading these logs isn't just about analyzing traffic patterns. It is actually a masterclass in spatial awareness, risk assessment, and human behavioral psychology under extreme, unrelenting pressure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to decode the absolute chaos happening on these streets. We want to understand the physical and the psychological mechanics of extreme urban driving and extract real tactical lessons that you, the listener, can apply to your own daily commute.
Right, because there are universal lessons here.
Absolutely. So to survive this specific asphalt grid, the author makes it abundantly clear that you first have to understand how drivers weaponize space. They are operating on terrifyingly thin margins of error. We are talking about millimeter tolerances here.
The precision is, frankly, unbelievable.
It is. Imagine trying to thread a tiny needle while riding a roller coaster. It stops being driving and becomes like high-speed spatial manipulation.
Spatial manipulation perfectly captures the mechanics of what is happening. The author documents an encounter on July 6th at the Patur curve that illustrates this brilliantly.
Oh man, the Patur curve hit. So to visualize this for you, the author describes an elevated F-shaped bend. Basically, it's a sharp, jagged turn that snaps back on itself, completely killing your forward line of sight.
Right, a blind apex.
Exactly. A total blind apex. Our analyst is pinned in this choked pocket of traffic. There's a white sedan hugging the right median and a scooter locking down the rear right quarter. The space is completely sealed.
Yeah, the geometry of the road says nobody else can possibly fit.
But then the analyst hears the high-pitched scream of an engine.
And a Yamaha R15 V3 motorcycle enters the frame.
And the rider doesn't even touch the brakes. They drop into a full 45-degree racetrack-style knee-touch banking maneuver straight through this microscopic gap.
It's wild.
The rider has his helmet tucked low, and he literally brushes past the sedan's rear bumper on the right, while simultaneously airbrushing the scooter's handlebars on the left.
Slicing through an impossible gap and avoiding a multi-vehicle catastrophe by literal fractions of an inch. And this behavior scales across different vehicle classes, too.
Oh, right, like the July 17th log.
Yes, from the Mudithara stretch. The analyst is cruising parallel to a red Swift. Without warning, a Piaggio Ape, which is a heavily loaded three-wheeled auto rickshaw, lunges into the center gap to make a reckless pass, threading the needle between the two larger cars.
And then there's the July 24th entry in that same area. A white Hyundai Verna, license plate KA03NA378, containing 5 suspects who were literally laughing out loud.
Just completely unfazed by the danger.
Exactly. They are zigzagging aggressively through a maze of heavy PVC channelization barriers on an S-curve. But here is the recurring metric that absolutely blew my mind. Across almost all of these high-speed breaches, the analyst records the clearance from their side mirrors or bumpers,
Right.
half an inch. 0.5 inches of clearance at high speed. How does a human brain even process that kind of spatial data without panicking and just slamming the brakes?
What's fascinating here is the mechanism behind that it's a radical neurological adaptation. In hypercongested environments like Thiruvananthapuram, the traditional textbook perception of safe distance evaporates entirely.
It's just gone.
Completely. Normally, your brain calculates speed and distance, and if a giant metal box gets within 3 feet of you, your amygdala, your brain's fear center, flares up. You instinctively brake. But here, that biological alarm system has been essentially overridden or, recalibrated.
They're completely desensitized to the danger.
Precisely. A 0.5-inch clearance isn't a near-miss accident to them. It is a calculated, normalized risk. The drivers enter a flow state where they trust their millimeter-level spatial awareness over the standard meter-level buffer zones.
Because if they don't move.
Exactly. They have to, because if you leave a gap larger than half an inch, someone else will instantly occupy it. Maintaining forward momentum requires suppressing the natural flinch response.
It's mind-boggling. They have recalibrated their brains to accept a half-inch margin of error as a perfectly reasonable buffer zone. But speed and razor-thin margins are really only half the threat in this asphalt anarchy. Because as we move deeper into the logs, we see what happens when multiple vehicles interact.
Yes, the dynamic changes entirely.
They start creating these structural nightmares, artificial choke points.
The danger really scales up here. We shift from individual drivers executing hyper-aggressive maneuvers to a collective architectural hazard. The geometry of the road itself is constantly being manipulated.
Let's look at the Akalam Bridge incident from July 3rd. Our analyst is in the open right lane, tracking a convoy of 3 auto rickshaws in the slow lane. Out of nowhere, one of the rickshaws violently yanks the steering wheel right, creating an instantaneous 2-lane barricade.
Just completely shutting down the flow.
Yep. Our analyst has to execute a heavy tactical lane drop to avoid a T-bone crash. And the second they vacate that physical space, a high-speed KTM Duke motorcycle instantly exploits the dropped lane and weaves right through.
This structural manipulation happens repeatedly. On July 20th, near the SP Fort Junction, 2 auto rickshaws park illegally on opposite edges of a tight corner.
The analyst calls it an artificial pillar wall.
A very apt description, I think. By parking offset from each other, they turn a 2-lane thoroughfare into a tight funnel, forcing all vehicles to squeeze through one by one. Eventually, a massive private bus lumbers in from the opposite direction, tries to enter the funnel, and triggers total, inescapable gridlock. The entire artery is choked off by the placement of 2 small vehicles.
And it just escalates.
Yeah.
On July 22nd, the analyst endures this grueling, hour-long sequence they call the 4-act urban raid.
That was a tense read.
Oh, super tense. It's a relentless barrage of parked scooters and autos violently pulling out into active lanes without warning. It culminates with a Piaggio ape carrying these long, protruding steel structures, swerving wildly, which physically pushes the analyst's car right up against a concrete central median.
Just a total squeeze play.
Right. But I actually had to push back on the author's terminology here a little bit.
Okay, let's explore that.
The author keeps using terms like pincer trap or ambush, and they titled the entire log The Syndicate. It paints a picture of, like, a criminal mastermind orchestrating the traffic. Are these drivers actually a coordinated syndicate executing tactical strikes on commuters? Or is the author just projecting military intent onto the natural, chaotic byproduct of a crowded city? It feels like they are seeing ghosts in the machine.
That's a really fair point. The distinction between intentional coordination and emergent behavior is a crucial lens for these logs. It is highly unlikely that the drivers of the Yamaha, the delivery van, and the parked scooters are communicating on headsets to coordinate an ambush on this specific analyst.
Right, they aren't sitting in a villain's lair plotting a barricade on the Aculum Bridge. So why use that framing?
Think about fluid dynamics or the physics of gas particles in a highly pressurized tank. If a microgap opens in that tank, a particle instantly fills it. The road is the pressurized tank. The vehicles are the particles.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
In an environment this dense, the road essentially becomes a high-speed chessboard where pressure is absolute. Any open geometry is instantly claimed by the most aggressive piece on the board.
So the lack of space forces them to move like a single aggressive organism.
Exactly. When that rickshaw creates the pillar wall or the parked scooter pulls out blindly, they are altering the geometry of the road in real time. The conscious intent behind the maneuver doesn't actually matter. The physical reality, the mechanical outcome on the ground, is identical to a coordinated attack. Defensive drivers are constantly forced into reactive, evasive maneuvers, just as they would be in a planned ambush.
Wow. So the Syndicate isn't a secret gang of drivers. The Syndicate is the environment itself. The emerging chaos acts with a hostile, coordinated pressure.
The system is the adversary.
Okay. But what happens when the physical geometry of the road fails completely? When the gridlocks happen, these drivers don't just sit there and wait. They stop playing by the rules of the road, and they start redefining what a road actually is.
Right, they just invent new space.
Exactly. Imagine you are playing a board game like chess, and you've got your opponent cornered. But instead of conceding, they just decide that the table itself, and I don't know, maybe the living room floor, is now part of the board. They just expand the playable area.
Expanding the playable area is a great way to conceptualize the total breakdown of infrastructure boundaries.
That is exactly what happens on July 6th at the Injackal footpath. It is total gridlock. The traffic light is red. There's even active police observation. But a massive Mahindra Scorpio, a heavy-duty SUV, decides they are done waiting.
So they just leave the road entirely.
The driver boldly mounts the sidewalk. They are driving with their left tires fully rolling over the pedestrian pavement, and their right tires balancing precariously on fragile concrete drain covers. They squeeze past the stationary traffic through illegal pedestrian territory, clearing the analyst's side view mirror by that magical number, again, 0.5 inches.
The specific detail the analyst provides about that Mahindra SUV adds a fascinating layer to this incident. The vehicle was prominently displaying a medical doctor emblem.
Right. A doctor's car going totally off-road onto a sidewalk. And they aren't the only ones ignoring boundaries. Another log from July 16th details a tiny bucket hatchback, a black Maruti Alto, hitting an unpaved, mud and pothole-filled margin on the side of the road just to secure an illegal overtake.
Desperation for any forward movement.
Yeah. Then we have what the analyst calls the signal hijack on July 10th. A white Tata Tiago is aggressively tailgating the analyst. Suddenly, the Tiago accelerates hard into a dedicated V-shaped U-turn lane.
A lane specifically built to separate turning traffic from the main artery.
Exactly, but they have no intention of U-turning. They use the dedicated lane purely as a bypass track, blazing past the queue of cars and then violently cut back into the main traffic at the very end to skip the line.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, examining these specific boundary-breaking maneuvers reveals the real-time fracture of the social contract.
The social contract.
Yeah, the rules of the road are essentially a shared psychological agreement. We all consent to stop at red lights and stay off sidewalks for our mutual safety and efficiency. But when congestion reaches a critical mass, the pressure shatters that contract. The paradox of the doctor's SUV perfectly encapsulates this.
Because a doctor is supposed to be saving lives, not, running pedestrians off the sidewalk.
Exactly. The medical emblem is a universally recognized symbol of societal care, implying a baseline commitment to preserving safety. Yet, in this hyper-pressurized microclimate, the emblem is inverted. It is almost utilized as a psychological shield, an implicit VIP pass that the driver uses to justify breaking public safety protocols.
Oh, that makes sense.
It strips away the shared agreement and replaces it with sheer individual justification under pressure.
It's a complete survival of the fittest mentality.
Yeah.
And the physical toll this environment takes on the defensive drivers trying to play by the rules is intense.
There's real collateral damage.
Definitely. On July 7th, the analyst notes a tight squeeze where a Maruti Baleno forced its way through a non-existent gap. It violently smashed the analyst's right side view mirror, and the middle-aged female driver just refused eye contact, slammed the throttle, and fled into traffic. A literal hit and run, risking major damage just to save a few seconds of commute time.
The exterior damage is one thing, but consider the hidden equipment toll inside the cabin. The dashcam blackout incident highlights the pure physical violence of navigating this space.
Oh, the blackout. The analyst's dashcam power completely cuts dead during a drive. Given the author's military framing, they initially suspected someone was using localized signal jamming technology.
Which sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It really does. But the forensic breakdown of the hardware revealed something much more grounded and frankly scarier. The emergency braking required to survive these sudden incursions was so violent that the sheer G-force physically dislodged the 12V power connection from the dashboard. The mechanical violence of just trying to stop the car safely is destroying the interior electronics.
The constant heavy kinetic energy transfers are literally rattling the vehicle's internal systems apart, which perfectly sets the stage for what I consider the absolute climax of this document. It is an event that brings together every mechanical and psychological element we've analyzed.
The masterstroke.
Yeah.
July 13th. Camara Chanta Lane. outside the Alpha Tuition Center. Let's walk through this because it honestly blew my mind.
It's a remarkably complex sequence.
The analyst logs this as a three-stage event.
Yeah.
Picture the setting for a second. Dozens of exhausted kids, distracted parents, heavy traffic, all competing for the same inches of space. A classic high-stress microclimate. Stage 1 is the decoy. Traffic is crawling. Suddenly, a child carrying a heavy school bag darts out blindly. Our analyst executes one of those violent emergency halts, stopping just inches away.
The vehicle is now entirely stationary. In the mechanics of the road, it has become a fixed obstacle, vulnerable to the pressure behind it.
Which triggers stage 2, the trap. While the car is frozen, two rogue auto rickshaws swarm in and pinch the analyst's car from both the left and the right.
Holding that 0.5-meter clearance, I imagine.
Exactly. A perfect tight pincer movement. The car is completely choked out, unable to move forward left or right.
The geometry of the road has entirely collapsed around the analyst. And then, stage 3.
The spin. To break the choke point, the lead auto rickshaw suddenly whips a sudden, full 360-degree U-turn across live traffic. And instantly, without any communication, the second auto rickshaw mirrors the exact same 360-degree spin. It forces our analyst into an immediate reverse maneuver just to escape this vortex of spinning metal.
It's astonishing.
When I read this, I was looking for the hidden cameras. It sounds like a choreographed Hollywood stunt sequence. I mean, what does this all mean? A dual, synchronized 360-degree auto rickshaw spin triggered by a pedestrian decoy. How does that even happen without planning?
It seems cinematic, but it is the raw reality of herd mentality and fluid dynamics in a high-stress microclimate. The road was entirely blocked, the pressure was building. The only way out for those rickshaws was to artificially create space through sheer rotational momentum.
Just carving out a pocket of air.
Right. And the synchronization happens because in hyperdense environments, drivers unconsciously mirror the evasion tactics of the vehicle directly in front of them to survive.
So they're just reacting to the sudden vacuum of space created by the first spin.
Precisely. It acts as a pressure release valve. This climax proves the author's underlying thesis throughout the entire log. The asphalt here isn't a static piece of infrastructure. It is a live, breathing, highly volatile environment.
Yeah.
The standard rules of physics and geometry are actively bent by the collective willpower of thousands of impatient minds. Survival depends entirely on predicting the unpredictable when the geometry fails.
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaways from this deep dive. The investigator actually leaves us with 3 final tactical directives for survival. Let me run through them because they are incredibly practical no matter where you drive.
They distill the chaos into actionable mechanics.
Directive 1. Side mirrors or target zones. Never let lateral space drop below 0.5 meters. You have to actively defend your buffer because if you leave a gap, the fluid dynamics of the street will fill it.
A constant, exhausting vigilance.
Directive 2. Always audit your dash cam power couplings because, as we learned, hard braking unseats 12V adapters. If the geometry of the road collapses into a scrape, you need that footage to prove what happened.
Essential for liability in a lawless space.
Definitely. And finally, Directive 3. Treat all blind, F-shaped curves as occupied, regardless of traffic signals, those sharp, jagged bends that cut your line of sight. It doesn't matter if you legally have the right of way. If you can't see the apex, you must assume there is a banking motorcycle or an auto rickshaw waiting for you.
They are stark directives, but they are born from intense, empirical observation of a hostile system.
And here's why this matters to you, the listener. You might be listening to this halfway across the world, but adopting this 0.5-meter perimeter mindset, assuming every blind angle holds a potential threat, treating the road not as a passive strip of pavement, but as a live, fluid environment, that mindset will make you a far superior defensively minded driver in your own city. You stop trusting the painted lines on the road, and you start trusting your own active spatial awareness.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I want to leave everyone chewing on. We constantly hear promises about the inevitable future of AI and self-driving cars. We are told that autonomous vehicles are going to completely solve traffic, that their advanced logic boards will compute perfect safety and efficiency.
Oh, right, the ultimate techno-utopia where we all just read books in the back seat.
But imagine dropping a perfectly programmed autonomous vehicle into the boiling chaos of Sector 0471. Would a machine's logic boards completely fry trying to process a Yamaha banking at 45 degrees, a doctor off-roading on a pedestrian sidewalk, and a pair of synchronized spinning auto rickshaws?
I feel like the AI would just hit the brakes, freeze in place, and never move again.
Exactly. Can you program a machine to understand that zero point 0.5 inches of clearance isn't an imminent fatal crash, but sometimes the only viable way forward? Or is this exact brand of human-induced, rule-breaking chaos the ultimate final boss that AI must defeat before it can truly take over our roads?
Because to a computer, this isn't a commute. It's a completely unpredictable, logic-defying combat zone. And as our field analyst has so vividly shown us today, when the asphalt turns to anarchy, the only thing that gets you home isn't perfect, rigid logic. It's reading the hostile flanks, guarding your mirrors, and surviving the syndicate 1/2 inch at a time. Keep your perimeter secure out there, everyone.